Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Silver Lyming. I have put together this podcast with the intent of really putting out material that will help people possibly learn more about Lyme disease in and of itself. Secondly, to hear some different ways that might have worked for other people to help their bodies heal. And maybe it's the last bit of information that you need on your own healing journey to get you across the finish line. But also, I want to share the fact that people are recovering from this and getting better. It's not usually a quick fix, unfortunately. A lot of times it can be almost a lifelong endeavor that we're striving to regain our optimal health, but it is possible. The longer you go with Lyme disease unchecked in your body, generally speaking, the harder it's going to be to get rid of it. So if you're suspecting that you've been infected with Lyme or tick-borne illness, do your best to get to a doctor as soon as possible because it is a time-sensitive organism. The longer it goes in your body, the deeper it burrows into the tissues and your organs. And again, the harder it becomes then to eradicate it. So this is definitely nothing to take lightly. And I, again, just want to share different stories. And you can hear through the podcast many different versions of what healing looks like and many different versions of what Lyme and tick-borne illness can do to people. Today, I have a really great guest, Mike Gottesman. I've met him on social media and have been following and connected with Mike now for a few years at least. I tried to remember this morning, actually, how long it has been, Mike, since we've been connected. And it's just been fun to watch your story because, you know, you're really open and honest about how you're feeling. Some days are good, some days are bad. And your story is another interesting one to share because I know you've been infected with Lyme more than one time. And so if you don't mind, if you could please just share with us a little bit more about your story, how you became involved in Lyme and tick-borne illness.
Well, I think you just touched on something really important. The amount of time you've had Lyme in your body and how fast you get diagnosed is really important. And I really stress that to people. Like prevention, early detection and prevention are obviously the two best things you got going for you in this disease. I unfortunately grew up, well, not unfortunately, happily, I grew up on ranches around animals, dogs, cattle, so exotic animals. So I had a great upbringing, but I was exposed to a lot of ticks, and I used to pull ticks off me like they were nothing. Like it was like getting mosquito bit. So I had heard of Lyme, but I thought I never really knew how devastating Lyme was. So I started having problems in college. I went from someone that was always on the go to like sleeping 15 hours a day. And my roommate called my mom and he's like, something's changed, something's wrong. And I wasn't depressed. I just had no energy. And from that day on, I have a list of, I got a file probably, I don't know, a foot big or, huge files of everything I've been misdiagnosed with from the time that college days to I didn't actually get diagnosed with Lyme until I was around 41. And I had just got my blue belt in jiu-jitsu. And somebody reached out to me. I had, I was 40 at the time. So I thought, well, maybe a lot of these aches and pains are age, and I would ask other guys that were my age in jiu-jitsu, like, man, when you go home, are you sore or you can't, the next day horrible? And they're like, no. And I'm thinking, man, something's not right. But I had been over the last 20 years, I had been diagnosed with so many things. Even my mom would say, doctor, there's something, no one can have this many problems. So unfortunately, I did not get diagnosed early. It went from my 20s till 40. But during that time, you name it, I was bloodletting. I was having, blood problems, different hormone problems, pituitary, testosterone, blood, hematocrit, hemoglobin. So by the time I got diagnosed, it had really set in deep, and there was a lot of issues. And looking back, I'm amazed at at how long I was able to even push through all this stuff. And I didn't realize it. I was pretty much miserable all the time, but I was just pushing through. So I got diagnosed, and I spent the next year and a half to 2 years on antibiotics. And my doctor didn't really instill in me that the kind of the seriousness that this could be a lifelong battle. I think at the time, I think he was just wanting me to make some progress before, before really explaining this. And so anyway, I spent the next 9 months, 10 months, or a year with really no progress, and I'm taking a lot of antibiotics, and I am kind of reaching a little bit of, I'm getting a little desperate, and I'm wondering, is this going to work? And so he's like, Mike, just stick with it. Eventually, something's going to give. And there was days I didn't feel any improvement. Matter of fact, I felt worse because I was hurting. So he's pretty smart, but he was getting older, and he did some blood work, and he asked me about my sleeping, and I wasn't wearing my CPAP, so he found out that my blood oxygen was low, and we added my CPAP back and oxygen, and from that day on, the next time I saw him, which was probably 2 or 3 months, my CD57 for the first time went from in the low or the high 50s, low 60s to back over like 150 for the first time in years. So that was the beginning of my remission that time. So that for me, the oxygen really helped boost things.
Okay. And I hear that a lot in terms of just the power oxygen has to help heal the body, right? Yeah. Hyperbaric oxygen chambers, things like this people do.
Yes.
Oxygen into the cells. And it obviously plays a very important function in just transport through the body, getting things where they need to go, and helping with the whole detox process as well.
Yes.
And so then after that time, then you were on your way to remission. Were you infected again after that?
Yeah, I had a good run. After that, I was started back training, competing. I went like on a tear making up for those 2 years. I wound up having an allergic reaction to some cookware that had nickel in it. Oh. And I mean, my whole body was hives, and I had to take prednisone and get a cortisone shot. And I went out of town to compete. And even with like full hives, I was going to go compete, because most of us with Lyme can push through quite a bit. So I get to the tournament, and by the end of the 4 days, I've cleared up, and I get home and I cook my overnight oats in the slow cooker it wasn't a ceramic, it was a steel thing. Anyway, I broke out in hives. So I figured out what was going on, but that prednisone and cortisone, I relapsed. So once again, I'm back on the antibiotics. Now that time definitely scared me. I was definitely upset, but it was just shorter, 3 to 4 months later, I was back doing things again. So that was a little bit uplifting. Like I didn't have to go through the 2 years of it again. So that taught me, we're all different. And I had been warned, don't take prednisone or cortisone. And now I see people that swear by it. It helps them. So we're all different. But for me, that definitely triggered my immune system to allow the Lyme to kick back in. So.
Okay. And that's why I've heard the same, just being part of the Lyme community, and that, steroids are really not necessarily helpful to us because they suppress the immune system, which our immune system is already super suppressed. So we need our immune system to kind of rebuild and refill itself, not be depleted or repressed. But I can get it too, that it does help some people, and everybody is different. There is the whole bioindividuality, of course. And that's a huge factor just when we look at a symptom set with Lyme or tick-borne illness, right? And some people, again, have the spirochetes in their body and have no symptoms. And other people have every symptom in the book and don't even test positive to the standard 2-tier testing. So, it's again, everybody's own underlying set of conditions, different markers and things that are in people's bodies that really will ultimately dictate that, I think, in the end, how it expresses itself and the things that we're sensitive to or not sensitive to. Can you talk then a little bit more about, so you were on antibiotics for 2 years and then another set following like 3 to 4 months. Do you do any kind of other herbal protocols or anything along those lines to help support yourself? Or is it more just Western medicine?
This was in the beginning of my journey. Only thing I did was antibiotics and probiotics.
Okay.
And of course, I tried to movement's always important to me, but at the time I didn't do any detoxing. I just took the antibiotics and I got better. Now that was the old me. The 10, 15 years down the road is a different me. So I am into, like, I did address the MTHFR and other, synapses. I have, I do take a lot of glutathione. I do salt baths. I do infrared sauna. So yes, detoxing is definitely part of the protocol now. And I'm trying to treat this in a more gentle approach than I used to, because I don't have any scientific proof. And I kind of used to get offended when people would rag on antibiotics because they helped me. But now the new me is like, well, did they do damage, helping me? And the answer is probably, I don't know how they couldn't have done a little bit of damage. But at the same time, I was really sick. So it's kind of like, to me, and a comparison would be chemo and cancer, like, which is worse, So I did spend a lot of time after that 2 years working with the naturopath on gut health and taking various products to get my gut back in check. And so I do think that at the end of the day, that if you do use antibiotics, that after you are in remission, even while you're on them, you need to be trying to eat the foods that are healthy for your gut and taking probiotics. And that at some point you're going to need to address your gut health, because we're learning more and more about the gut and the brain connection and just your overall, your immune system. So.
Yes, very much so. And that's a good analogy in that, like, chemo or cancer, which is worse. And I thought about this many times too with antibiotics, and it's like where I'm at in my studies and what I've learned. And like I understand that it impacts our biome and our body function and how we are as humans, our ability to prevent sickness and disease from happening. But I was so sick. Like, would I have gotten better without them? Right. I just had this conversation with someone who was like, you should really save the antibiotics for when you're really sick. And I was like, you know what? The last person who said that to me almost lost their tongue, because I have to say this was like the fight of my life. I had never been so sick before. And I hope I'm never as sick ever again in my entire existence. Right. Like I can't imagine ever being that sick again, but could I have gotten better without them? Would I have gotten better without them? I don't know. And this is something that people ask me often, like, should I take antibiotics? And it's like, I don't know. You've got to do what feels right to you and what feels right for your body.
Yes.
I do think after an extended period of time, you really have to start to question the efficacy, or obviously maintaining your organs, just making sure that your organs are not being affected permanently.
The kidneys and livers.
Yeah. Because mine started to show wear. I don't know if I started to have abnormal test results and things in my organs. Yeah. I don't know if that happened to you.
It did not happen to me the first go around. Since I've relapsed, I did try to stay on Doxy, and it didn't sit well. I started having problems relatively quick too. Within 2 months, my markers were going up, each time. So I had to quit that. I'm handling what I'm on now. I'm not seeing anything, which is good. I'm blessed, thankful for that. And so, yeah, it's definitely a legitimate concern. And I think a lot of people too, I know my doctor did do follow-up blood work, but maybe not as often as probably would be preferred,
Yeah. So. But that's good that at least you're monitoring somewhat, just to make sure that you're doing okay. And where are you at right now with your treatment? Because I feel like I've been seeing some things lately that you've been trying some new stuff. Are you?
Yeah. So I'm really, like I said, like we talked about, I was really just gung ho antibiotic, and I didn't understand why people would dismiss them. I would see people take antibiotics and get really sick. In my mind, they were herxing and they didn't want to deal with it. And I don't blame them, because it's horrible. I see some people stay on them for 6 months and say they didn't work. And my response, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a know-it-all, but my response might be, you probably weren't on them long enough. And that's just from my personal experience. It took me, like I said, I didn't make any real improvements for like a year and a half. And it was when the oxygen was added with the antibiotics that I really bounced back. So I do see people really dog antibiotics, and I see, like on the LymingDisease.org, the biggest success rate I see is with antibiotics on their study, the MyLyme data. So it's like, what at the end of the day, you nailed it. You got to do what resonates for you. But I feel like if you're, like, let's say, for example, you pick something and 3 years later, you're still really sick, you might need to switch it out. So what I've been doing this time, I've been trying to take a more gentle approach. I've been doing different herbal protocols, the two major ones, kind of switching back and forth. And I've done some SOTs that have helped a lot. And I'm fixing to do a round of peptides, 4 different peptides. Okay. The BPC 157, I don't know what is it, the T1, and there's 4 of them that are on Marty Ross's. I'm going to do all 4. One of them is particularly interesting because it kind of helps with mast cell. And I feel like one of my biggest issues right now, I'm not laying around feeling horrible most of the time, but the external environment seems to be a real, like if it's smoky or high pollen, I'm sick. So I don't know if that's maybe a minor form of mast cell, or if I just have horrible allergies, which I've always had bad allergies, but I think the antibiotics have kind of made my allergies worse over the years. I don't know that for a fact, but it's kind of a suspicion I have. So I'm trying to treat this now as gently as I can. And then if at a certain point, if nothing's going to work, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have to step up to, like the double or triple dapsone, something that I really am trying to hold off on, that I prefer not to do. Yes. But if it means being back in remission, then I'm going to do it.
Yes. So. And that's fair. And that's what through Ayurveda, I've learned to really go more of the approach that you're going slow, but steady, right? Like you can't just go forcefully and attack and try to kill, because you're probably going to be unsuccessful. You can't really kill it fully. I don't think. It's more of just getting it down to a point in your body where you can just peacefully coexist and still feel well. Right.
Yeah.
So I like that you're kind of going more with this approach, although sometimes it seems like it would be easier to get out the nukes and just blast it.
We all want that magic pill. We don't want to be sick for 2 years. We want to be sick for a day and be better. And Lyme is not that disease.
That's correct. It's definitely not the fast race to the end, unfortunately, for most people. And I often will be careful when I say that, because I like to think it could be. You could heal instantaneously, but what I've seen and what I've learned, a lot of people do not have that experience. But I have talked to people who have, so it is possible.
Yeah.
And so this go around, how long now has it been that you've been struggling this time?
Man, I got sick in 2019 training for Mount Kilimanjaro, and man, I thought I didn't think I was going to live through this one. This one was a really bad relapse. A lot of nasty stuff happening. And I live alone. I lived on the ranch. So it's, I'm not whining about it, but it's really hard when you're that sick and you're alone. Thank God I'm blessed with a wonderful mom who, even though she's 20 years older than me, and I feel like sometimes I feel like a burden. She'll at the blink of an eye, if she needs to be here, she'll get here. And, I try not to lean on that, but one thing that Lyme's taught me is sometimes you need a little help from either your parents, your friend, anybody that's willing to help you that understands is a true blessing in someone's life that has Lyme. So
to that, especially as a single person, I sympathize that it's difficult. Like it's sometimes hard just to get out of bed and make food for yourself, or to do laundry, or to clean, or just to shower,
the basic daily stuff sometimes. Yeah. And then you have your days where, like a real horrible day, like, do I want to go to the hospital? Do I want to drive myself to the hospital? And if somebody was there, you would probably go, but since they're not, you're just like, well, I'm just going to ride it out and lay in bed. So
yeah, it's a lot easier to hide, in a sense, when you're alone.
Yes. Yeah.
But I often think too about people who are not alone. And I've heard then from their perspective, it's a little bit harder sometimes to heal because your family and friends hold you in that space of your sick identity. And like on a daily basis, they're constantly looking at you like that. So it's like, gosh, I don't know if there's a happy medium with any of this, but
it's tough. And even what you just said, even though I am alone, I have my friends that I call it wishful thinking. They want to project, like you're getting better. And I'm like, I'm trying to get better. Like, I don't want to be sick, like I do not choose to be sick. But I get it. It's they don't understand, first of all, that just how hard this is to beat. And I've found, and this is just me, my personal experience is most people that don't have Lyme, they're not going to read the articles I send them. And that's just a reality. And so I have to work on my inner peace, and I can't let that bother me. But I will say that over the years, I've become a lot less tolerant to people with this wishful thinking and trying to project stuff on me. I'm not aggressive, but I do draw boundaries now. And it's only because what you just said, if your body's in fight or flight and you're constantly upset and angry because someone said something that shows that they don't comprehend at all what's going on, and you're up here battling out for your life, and you react to it, well, you're just keeping yourself wound up and in fight or flight. And it took me a long time. People like you and some other people that were posting about trauma and stuff that never, as a male, kind of an alpha male, I didn't really ever consider trauma or any of that kind of stuff in my healing journey. But now I do. I started realizing, if I watch a movie and all of a sudden I have tears, I'm like, wait a minute, something is not right here. This is not the old Mike. And so I bought some books on trauma, and I realized, what might be traumatic to you might not be traumatic to me at all. So all of our, and something that like I've been stabbed, that didn't bother me a bit. I can see knives. I can see, that didn't bother me. But Lyme is a different ballgame. And I do have trauma from it, which I never would have realized until I started seeing people do DNR and addressing trauma. Because to me, trauma, because I didn't study it, even though I did get a Bachelor of Science in psychology. I know, when I heard trauma, I kind of just went with like someone who grew up in an abusive home, someone who was, molested or beaten. I didn't realize that trauma could come from just the illness itself and that kind of thing. So I have educated myself on trauma and tried to address. So without talking too much, my whole approach to treating Lyme now is in my mind, you need to treat the infection, you need to treat your brain, you need to support your body with the nutrients it needs, the water it needs, the rest it needs. Like the more so to me, you can have like a boxing match or a wrestling match, but Lyme is like a full on mixed martial arts match. You need every tool in the book.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Wholeheartedly. I'm just sitting here in full agreement. Like, such a good description. I often think of it as like, you need to take a sledgehammer and hit it from every side possible. Like, it's not just like one approach. You've got to come, all full circle. So I'm thinking about your jiu-jitsu and just, yeah. But also I'd like to acknowledge you for being open to a different way and for your own admission and learning along this journey about trauma and paying more attention to that. And I wish that there was a different word for it, because I'm with you. I feel like trauma portrays or conjures up all kinds of images that are trauma, but don't fully encapsulate it. Even just getting stuck at a traffic light can be somewhat traumatic for people. Like, it can be very small little pebbles, or little blips. But over time, they add up, they accumulate to equal like a bigger issue, right? And sickness in and of itself is definitely a huge trauma. The things that potentially, choosing on how you look at it, the things that maybe it's taken away from you in your life, or the things that it doesn't allow you to do, or PTSD. Like, I've got a lot of PTSD from it. And I know that's probably not uncommon. Like, you don't want to get sick again. You feel something weird in your body and you're like, so it's like all kinds of trauma, and we're constantly in fight or flight mode when we're trying to repair and heal ourselves. So it's not just, I don't think, a simple fix of just a physical dis-ease. It's a full out body dis-ease, and you have to make adjustments to support yourself physically as well as mentally and emotionally.
Yes.
So good for you. Do you find that since you've kind of more stepped into that space, that it's shifting things more for you? Are you noticing a difference when you're looking at it?
I'm not walking around with that Lyme rage, when someone makes a comment that really digs under my skin. If someone, on social media, everybody can post what they want, and some of it's very insensitive, and some of it's very misguided and just way off base. So I've learned, I've learned to push that aside. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I might get bent out of shape for 5 minutes, but I know up here that 5 minutes is not helping me any, and that I need to let it go. And that's where, growing up, I was always a people pleaser, and I had a hard time saying no. Now I can say no in the blink of an eye. I don't feel guilty about it. I'm not being mean. I'm protecting myself and doing what I need to do to heal. So if people don't understand, it can be someone that I love and care about, but if they don't understand and support me in my journey, I'm going to cut ways with them for now. And maybe 5 years later down the road, maybe if we still have a connection and something in common, then maybe we can be friends. But I would probably not expect that person to understand or be there should I relapse. They're like I said, I did not understand the trauma aspect, but when your friends start falling and disappearing and people don't understand, and you're over here alone and nobody gets it. It creates a little trauma and upset, and it's hurtful. So you're not only dealing with a horrific disease, you're dealing with psychology part of being hurt and misunderstood and gaslighted by a system that's not really there for you. So. And there's a lot that we could go on for hours about just how the gaslighting and all that kind of stuff is. It's so I did finally get to a point where I realized, hey, Mike, you're only hurting yourself by keeping yourself worked up. Just breathe in, let it go, and just be happy. If you can go out today and walk and fly your bird, the hawk, and fly, whatever you can do, go enjoy life, because we're only here one time. And that's another thing. I'm going off on a tangent here, but that I realized too within my Lyme journey is this is by God's design. We have a life cycle. And I think a lot of us get caught up in the worldly desires and goals. And that's good because we are here on the world and we're supposed to live our life. But I think a lot of us forget that it's by God's design. There's a beginning and an end. And you can try to fight that end. But we're all going to eventually, there's going to be an end. So I started also, once I realized that, I realized the importance of getting in touch with, I do my daily devotional. This is Sarah Young, who just unfortunately passed away. Are you familiar?
No. Mm-mm.
So this is Jesus Calling by Sarah Young. One of her books, it discusses her battle with chronic Lyme.
Okay.
And if you read this, and there won't be one day, there might be one day that doesn't resonate with you. And when I picked this up, I was like, man, how is this resonating so strongly with me? And then I found out she had battled chronic Lyme. She just passed a few weeks ago. So you can find some information on that. But
did she pass? Was she older or?
She was older. She was,
okay.
I think she was in her late 70s or 80s, but she'd had it for a long time. And I think when she passed, she was battling cancer at the time.
Okay.
So the EBV probably. So.
Thanks. I just wasn't sure if she passed from the Lyme or who knows what hand that played in it. But while I'm thinking about it, just to call out that, you can honestly die from Lyme disease and tick-borne illness, which is another reason that this is very a serious topic. And I just want people to understand the different formats that Lyme can manifest in our bodies. I can't remember if you talked about this, but when you were at your sickest, I think you had said you were bedbound for 2 years. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so again, just to call out, Mike couldn't get out of bed for 2 years. This again can take many different forms and fashions in people's bodies. Do you have co-infections?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I read a little bit about you. My EBV marker's off the chart. Every time I was getting my blood work when I moved to Wyoming, the infection, I don't remember if it's the monocytes, leukocytes. Anyway, one of those that shows infection just kept climbing. And I'm telling the doctor, hey, man, I got an active infection, and I need treatment. And he's like, I hear this all the time. It's I just laugh about it now, but it bothers me because it's wrong. And I'm a real stickler for wrong and right. And, when a doctor, he's like, well, we don't have Lyme in this state. And I'm like, well, does that matter? Because look, I have a Lyme positive test. We can't help you. So I'm like, so now I got to go to New York or California because you're not willing to help me. And at the end of the day, I understand, hey, who wants to go to school for that long and have that much money and an education and then lose their job? I wouldn't want to, but I think I would be, and this might backfire me. I might be like, hey, I can't help you, but here's what you need to do. You need to go to this place or this, I don't think I would just completely shut them out, but I think legally that's probably their best option. So,
yeah, which is unfortunate because again, that whole issue is something that people truly don't get. I had posted something on TikTok the other day about how expensive treatment is for people. It's a clip from one of my other episodes. And two people posted, one was like, my insurance covered it. And someone else was like, stop spreading fake news. Your insurance covers this. And I was like, okay. And I'm checking myself for a second. I'm like, no, wait a second. Your experiences that you lived, and that's why I started prodding. I'm like, what states do you live in? Did you have long-term or did you catch it right away? Because of all of these things are huge factors. If you catch it right away, I do think the initial 2 weeks of doxycycline or whatever are, Yeah. And so, but for those who have gone on a longer journey with it, it's not. And all the alternative things, all the different stuff that you have to try, that, it's not covered. And I just don't think people really understand that well enough. They expect insurance to cover sickness. And this is one sickness that oftentimes it does not.
It's not covered, no. And most of your high-end doctors, they're not even they're so busy, they don't want your insurance. They're not, I mean, they may help you, but basically you're paying out of pocket.
Correct.
So,
correct. Which I don't think people quite get. And I've been meaning to look at it, and I'm going to write myself a note this time and maybe I'll actually get to it. But I'm curious, do you know which states cover Lyme treatment?
I know that any state I've ever been in, I'm flat out told, which is only Texas, Oregon, and Wyoming, and when I bring it up, they're like, we don't treat that here. Like we don't have that in our state. And I'm thinking, I don't know how you don't, considering animals are transported nowadays, and they, like if I moved from a tick infested region in the Northeast to Texas with the dog that had a bunch of ticks on it that were infected, I just brought a bunch to Texas. So, I don't understand how anybody could even believe that or think that with today's, when you can transport cattle and animals and dogs from, so easily, and the ticks, that, not to mention the birds that they travel on and all that kind of stuff. So I don't understand why people don't get it, but like the old saying in Lyme goes, you don't get it until you get it.
That's right. Unfortunately. And we know that living it. So that's 3 states that you've been in. I'm here in PA. I know it's not covered in Pennsylvania. I've talked to someone who is in New Jersey and New York, and I don't think either of those states cover.
Nope.
So that's at least a fourth of the states that don't cover in our country. And that's just off the top of my head that I can rattle off those just because I know people who live there. And so that's a big problem. And that's a big barrier for people to heal themselves. I think also part of it is that there's not one general consensus on how to get better, right? It's not like, this is how you do it. You take these antibiotics for this long and then you're instantly better. Like, it's just a lot of trial and error, a lot of testing different antibiotics, different herbs, different support treatments for yourself to see what really is going to work better. And I think it also kind of depends on your starting point, right? Like, how sick are you when you first start treatment? Because you mentioned earlier about herxing. For people who aren't familiar with herxing, Herxheimer reaction is a die-off when you start to kill bacteria in your body. Sometimes it can't exit your system fast enough that it then causes you to feel sicker before you start to feel better, till you can actually detox all of that out of you. And again, I don't think people understand that can maybe happen, because it's like you're on treatment, you're just going to get better right away. It's a zigzaggy line. It's a lot of ups and downs. It's a lot of curves and twirls and steps forward and back. And I know just from watching you on your journey, right? Like you're in great shape one minute, and then the next minute I see you maybe had a little bit of a tougher day or tougher period of time. And it stinks to see you go through that. I'm glad to hear that it seems like recovery times are getting like it's faster for you to get better in between. But you should be able to enjoy your life. You should be able to go out, do the hunting that you like to do. I know you're just on a hunting trip, and it took a little bit more out of you than maybe what you were hoping. And it's put you back, a little bit for a couple of days. And I hate to see that happen to you, because again, it's like, you just want to live your life and have good quality and just be normal, right? Like just be able to function and do things that are considered normal. And not have this weight on your back of trying to figure out how to navigate and just make sure you're going to have what you need to feel well. Curiously speaking, I'm just thinking about, I see a note about permethrin. When you go hunting, are you wearing like permethrin treated clothes? How are you taking care of yourself?
I do try to spray my clothes. Yeah. I try to spray them the night before and set them out. I'm not the best about it. I might, like I said, the majority of the time I try to do it, but occasionally, like if I get, like yesterday, I had a phone call. Somebody needed an elk tract on the mountain. Well, I didn't take the time to do it, spray and stuff. And my mom gets up really upset. You're going to get Lyme again. I'm like, I already got Lyme, like I've already been through it. So it'll just be another round, and she's like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, well, I'm stubborn. So, but to be honest, it's something I try to do. I have a weird thing though. I don't like chemicals. So that's another kind of a touchy subject, but but if I know I'm going to be in the field, then yes, I try to spray at least my boots and my socks and kind of the lower part of my pants.
That's good. And how about a natural repellent? Something maybe like TikTok Naturals. I don't know.
Yeah, I've tried those too. Yep.
Yeah. Just I'm weird about chemicals too. I feel you, but I wish it didn't have to be that hard. I wish we could just go out in nature and not have to worry and be scared or like thinking about ticks or whatever. Cause I can see a beautiful field of grass and I'm like, I wonder how many ticks are out there. Like that's where my head goes, right? Like it's just permanently changed, I think, my thought patterns about being in nature and how to enjoy it, unfortunately.
And that's goes back to the kind of the PTSD. See, for some reason, I don't have that. Like, I can see the woods and mountains and I can go without even thinking about a tick. Now, I will say that I did go once and I found a tick on me and then my mind did not like that. I was like, uh-oh, I got to get out of here. And I watched, I didn't see a rash, but we know that doesn't mean anything. And I was just like, shoot, man, like, I didn't like that experience, but so when I do try to be careful and at least check when I get home and even out in the field, I'll try to check and stuff. But like a lot of us, mosquitoes, I swell up real big, chigger, like there's other stuff out there that you don't want either. So
for sure. Yes. And the mosquito thing, I don't even want to think about. That's obviously been a topic a lot more lately too, just the mosquitoes and what they're transmitting. And what did I see a video the other day that there was a fogger truck going through the city of New York just spraying.
I saw that. Yeah. And they were mad because they were spraying the pesticides. And I was saying, and I think they didn't like the pesticides, but I'm like, you wouldn't like West Nile either.
Yeah, no. And again, it's, do I want cancer or chemo? Like, I don't think either one is probably either that I want, right? Like,
right.
They're both bad choices, I suspect. But I don't know how I'd feel about that. I'm pretty sure they've sprayed here in the area for mosquitoes at some point in time too.
I think they spray at night a lot behind, kind of secret, and who knows what they're spraying. And it's interesting too, because it's another one of those, if you're in the Lyme community, you don't like it. But so there can be 10 cases of West Nile and they start spraying. Meanwhile, there's 450,000 cases of Lyme and they don't do nothing. So,
right.
I don't understand it, but it's a reality. So I deal with it.
That's a very good question about that too. And they've got all kinds of natural sprays and stuff. One of my friends makes a garlic spray, Ecotic, and he's out of Canada and he's been very successful at proving that his product is much more effective even than chemicals. So hopefully we can embrace the thought that other municipalities and stuff will start using that kind of product instead.
Yeah.
And then I think, Mike, do you have any words of advice or encouragement for those that are still kind of struggling with Lyme or trying to figure out what to do or how to help themselves?
Well, you just nailed it. Is help yourself, because if you're waiting on somebody to help you, so I'll try to be quick about this, but the main thing is help yourself. Do a lot of research. Follow, get on social media. Hashtag Lyme disease, Lyme awareness. Start following people that are making waves and trying to really give back to the community. I try to do it more silently, like inspiring through my adventures and sometimes when I'm complaining. But there's a lot of good people to follow that are putting out a lot of good information. And I would say for anyone that's, new at it or even old, just don't give up. Always try to have a really positive attitude. And if you're a victim in this disease, you're not going to fare well, I don't think. Because when I first got diagnosed, I was definitely the victim, the why me, poor me mentality. And then one day, I was sitting around the ranch, looking out the window at some deer, and it's kind of someone, my higher power, talking to me. So I like wildlife, and I was like, you know what? why am I so special? Why not me? I mean, why am I any better? Why shouldn't I have this? And so to me, you can't have the why me or the poor me mentality. You can have a bad day. If you have a bad day, go to bed and wake up better the next day. And so it's just thinking positive, taking one instead of. So in jiu-jitsu, it's a long-term goal. Your short-term goal is to get your next belt promotion or get your next move down. Well, Lyme disease is very similar. It's not about, more than likely you're not going to heal tomorrow. So you have a very long-term goal. Might not be 10 years, but it's probably not going to be 1 week either. So try to focus on the little baby steps, baby improvements, and find something in your daily life that makes you happy, regardless of how horrible you may be feeling. You need to smile and the endorphins of happiness coming in. And so that's two things I can say is probably real high on the priority is making sure to make some happiness time. Don't just sit around in misery. And also, if there are people in your life that are kind of bringing you down, it's okay to draw boundaries. That does not mean you're a mean person. So
no.
Yeah.
I'd say it means you're a sensible person and that you're protecting yourself, right?
And you have to, because like we mentioned, nobody else is, and you do have to be your biggest advocate. And one thing I would like to share is I was, when I got diagnosed, right before I got diagnosed, I was going to all kind of doctors, infectious disease, neurologist, internal medicine, you name it. I was going there, nerve conduction studies, all kind of doctors and specialists. And I was having foot problems, the Bartonella and burning feet and man, I was at my ropes end. And at the time I weighed about 220, pretty strong. And I went into a doctor that was a foot doctor that played football, I think I don't remember whether it was Denton or TCU, but a Texas team. He was a real big guy. And I broke down in tears. And I'll never forget it because I was really embarrassed. That was kind of the low point in my life. And he grabbed me by the shoulder. And he's like, "Hey, big guy, you're going to be okay." And I'm like, "No, dude, I'm literally, my lymph glands look like baseballs. One doctor's already telling me to go get checked for lymphoma." And I'm like, "Man, I'm dying." And he goes, calm down. And I'm literally in tears, and he's like, "Mike, you're a big, strong guy." And he goes, when a big, strong guy is dealing with everything you got going on, it's okay to cry. He goes, you're in a very bad place right now. And he goes, "But I want to tell you something, Mike." He goes, "All these doctors you're telling me you're going to, unfortunately, you're in what I would call a gray area of medicine, where there's, whatever he wants to call it, autoimmune or whatever." He's like, "You're kind of in a gray area where Western medicine's probably going to fail you." And he goes, "You need to step up and be your own medical advocate." And I'm like, "What?" That was kind of a new one on me, because we go our whole lives trusting doctors. I had just spent the last 20 years with so many diagnoses and taking so much stuff that didn't help me a bit. And here's a guy that's finally being honest, saying, "You need to be your own medical advocate. You need to do your own research." And I'm like, well, whenever I go to Joe Blow, he tells me, "Quit looking at Google," and he's like,
"Yeah,
keep doing your own research, but on legitimate platforms, PubMed, blah, blah, blah." And I left that doctor appointment feeling hope for the first time in years. And I haven't done it in a long time, but yearly I would write him after I got in remission, I would write him a letter like, you saved my life. Like, I was literally think I was not going to make it. And because you realized that I was being failed and told me that I need to step up, be my own medical advocate, you saved me. And so there are good doctors out there. I tell people that there's a lot of ones that want to run you through there like cattle and just collect the paycheck. Get rid of them. Don't ever go back to them. Find a doctor that cares, that even if they can't treat you, will tell you like he did me. Like, hey, Mike, they're not going to help you. Find someone, be your own medical advocate, do the research, and find someone that'll help you. And he even offered, I didn't take him up on it, but he was like, look, if you can't get anywhere, call me. We'll go meet for coffee and we'll kind of brainstorm. And I never took him up on that because I did it myself. But in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, I just met the one doctor in the world, that I've been to over the past 10 years that legitimately cares about people. And it was really, heartwarming. And in the Lyme community, I do feel like we are hard on doctors, and there is, I'm not saying they don't deserve it, because a lot of them do, but there are some good doctors out there. It's just, you got to find them.
Very much so. And I think it's awesome that you let him know how much he helped you, just by being an honest human with you. Right. And not like he didn't have an answer per se, but he had an answer for you. But it wasn't like the name of what was plaguing you, but at least it was something that let you know that you're legitimate, you're seen, you're not crazy, like just to keep going, and we're sorry we can't help you from a Western medicine perspective, but there is help available. You've just got to kind of find it yourself, unfortunately.
Yeah. He acknowledged all this stuff you're saying. It's real. It's just, they're not going to be the ones to find it and tell you that it's real. So, and the one thing you touched on, I don't want to sound negative, is the 2-tier testing, which is something that really, I send friends links to, and they'll just say, well, I took the test and tested negative. I'm like, what test did you take? Because It does matter. And they come back and, well, just the one, the doctor. I'm like, no. And then one thing, you see is someone will test positive on that 2-tier test, and they'll tell them it's a false positive. I'm like, are you kidding me? What, like, give me a break. So that's something that I really, I'm glad you're getting out there, is how faulty the testing is. It's just, and that people, and it's sad for me when I know a guy that tested, I forget what is it called, CRS or something, CPRS.
PCR?
No, it's he got a very nasty disease that eats like your myelin sheath and stuff, chronic something. Anyway, I Googled it and like this disease plus Lyme disease. And he had just posted a picture of him hunting like 2 months before with a deer. And he's like, I've never had a tick on me. And I'm like, I grew up with you. We grew up in the woods. You've had plenty of ticks on you. Well, he went with the treatment for this other disease. And I had Googled it and read where other people were saying, do not take the corticosteroids. Anyway, this guy wound up being dead in like 2 months. And my heart was broken. And you touched on this earlier that often we view Lyme as kind of a chronic illness, but my opinion of it is a chronic illness, but it can be a terminal illness in the blink of an eye. And just since my relapse, I've seen some people that I really admire and look, Terry and Dr. Spector, and those are all hit home pretty hard.
Yes.
So
yes, it's awful because it's people that you see all the time on Facebook or in this world, and then they're no longer there. And both of them were doing very well, for years prior to, and that's what I and so without going on, I had noticed during my last few years when I was traveling and I was doing way too much. I thought I was 20 again. I was going to skydive and compete and travel the world.
and I noticed I was starting to slip. So I went back on antibiotics that used to work and kind of just played dumb to the symptoms. And I paid the price for that. So part of me looking back, I had a great time. I got to see the world and do some cool things, but I'm paying the price for it. And it's been, it's been probably more of a price than I probably prefer to pay. And now I've learned, once I get through this relapse, my whole life is just going to be about peace, serenity. I'm still going to do things, but it's going to be a more calm, local, not pushing myself to extremes kind of fun and peace.
Yeah, good. And it's different stages of life require different levels of whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, sure.
And so I will think about that a lot with Ayurveda too. It's like people are like, but what I'm doing for my body, it used to work and it's no longer working. And it's like, well, yeah, because you're a different person than you were then. We've changed, we're constantly going through changes. We're like the river that maybe looks the same on the surface, but underneath it's never the same thing twice. And so we're always changing. And the support we need changes, and the things that we have to do to help ourselves and the things that we like. I mean, of course, we're allowed to change. That's one of the best things of being a human. We change. We have the ability to make choices and do things differently. And you can acknowledge and learn from the contrast of previous experience to say, I would prefer more peace, or I would prefer a smoother existence. I've learned my lesson. I understand that going so extreme or so crazy, or for me, like constantly cutting things to the last minute, and then I'm in a hurry, like, you don't have to do this. I can make a different choice, because out of that creates a lot of anxiety or a lot of tailspin that we don't really need to do to ourselves. But, and so we get wiser as we get older. So I think that's a very smart thing that you're acknowledging that, what you did was good, but time for a change and to do something a little bit differently for yourself moving forward. Yeah. And then I guess as a final question, this has been really great, Mike. I am really enjoying this conversation and your insight. Is there anything, like, what would you say is the best thing that's happened to you as a result of Lyme and tick-borne illness?
Oh man, it took me a long time to realize that even though this is a very brutal disease, that's I call it the never-ending roller coaster of Lyme, the ups and downs, the good days, the difficult days, the tears, the laughter. For me, it's brought me closer to God. It's made me appreciate the relationships, like with my mom and the people that do support me. I'm very appreciative of people in my life that understand all that's going on and are there to help me. And I've always been someone that's like, if I have a friend in a business, I always try to build them. Like, I don't try to break people down. I always try to build my friends up. But I found when I had Lyme, all my Lyme posts, really like 90-something% of my friends I noticed were ignoring. They were disappearing on my Lyme post, and I'm like, man, I build you up, and now I'm not getting any love back over here during the hardest time of my life. So the blessings, I realized is it's God. So like I told you, I'm a really restless person, and I used to be kind of wild, and I think he was like, you know what, Mike, we're going to teach you. We're going to rein you in a little bit. You need to learn how to live a little more zen and peace. And you don't have to be on the go all the time. You can be happy at home. And that one was really a brutal lesson, because I was not happy at home for a long time. And then I think every day I read my devotional, and it really resonates. And it's made me realize that the ways that, I like the world, don't get me wrong. And I'm probably materialistic. I like toys and stuff, but I realized in the big picture, none of these toys are going with me anywhere. I'm not taking them on the other side. And that my main purpose here is I need to be right with God before my time comes. And I need to be right with, I need my relationships to be, I need my mom to know that she's the most important person to me. I need my friends that are my true friends to know that I care about them. And I may not always be front and center, but they're always in my prayers and thoughts. Like, I'll see people suffering in the Lyme community and I don't say anything, but I'm praying for them because I know what they're going through and I know it's not fun. So that's the blessing is I've learned to appreciate things and be grateful for smaller things.
Which is a beautiful gift in of itself, because there is that saying, it's the little things that matter. And sometimes we don't see them, or we're just too busy with other things or focusing on the wrong stuff to see the small
It's easy
things.
to get distracted in this world. Very
much so. We're humans. And especially these days, they've got all the bells and whistles everywhere, constantly zapping at you, making it almost impossible to focus sometimes. But that's a good gift in a sense to have. It's not in a sense to have, but I'm more when I say that is like, it sucks in the way that you had to learn it. But I'm glad that you've gotten that perspective, because it does make life a little bit more fulfilling, right? When we can just be, be. That's something I've been practicing. It's just being, and it's very hard. Lyme taught me a lot about patience and having to be okay to just be. And maybe I don't have the energy to do something, or however it would go when I was still not right. And it's good to acknowledge again that not everything about it is bad. There are some good positives that come out of such an arduous struggle.
Definitely. I think it takes most of us some time to find it, but we find it. And I've even read, I've said this, I don't know if I 100% mean it, that in many ways I wouldn't give Lyme back. Obviously, I prefer not to deal with some of it, but it has taught me a lot of good things. So, and I'm like, we're both still here going. So, and we're making the best of it. So that's all you can do. All you can ask for.
Yes. And I'm with you. I say it and I'm like, do I really mean that 100%? Like, I don't know. Would I trade it? I mean, I'm really grateful because it's made me who I am, just as all of my life experiences have put me to this place now. But
yes.
Would I pick, if I could have come out this way in a different way, maybe I would have picked that. I don't know what that way would have looked like, but I don't think I would have signed up for this freely at the beginning. Like, oh yes, let me sign up for this journey because I'm going to come out this looking like this at the end. Like,
no, you've blossomed and are doing great things. One thing I'll say, like, Lyme is so brutal. So as a teenager, I got in a weird altercation and someone stabbed me, and it went 3.5 inches in my gut. It nicked my spleen and I almost bled to death. And, I was young, dumb, carefree, stayed in the hospital for about a week, came home. I would have to push these big Q-tips in there to keep it open and draining. But you know what? That did not create any PTSD. That never skipped a beat. I was going to the beach as soon as I could and living it up. But Lyme is a whole another ball game, and it creates PTSD. So I tell people, and the non-Lyme people just look at me like I'm like making it up, or oh yeah, right. And I tell them flat out, if I had the choice to get stabbed right now and live through it, like if it would be the exact same outcome, same surgery, everything was the exact same, I'd be like, go ahead and do it. Let's get this over with. Because Lyme is not like that. It's a battle, man. And it's one that you have to really dig deep, and people don't realize the importance. You're not only digging deep physically, it's going to challenge you mentally. And if you don't amp your mental game up and your gratitude and you have that poor me, all it ain't going to work too good. Like you. And I know it's a process. We all start there at the bottom, poor me, and start working our way up. And maybe that's the gift in this thing is to see that you can go from such a low place to building yourself up to the person that you never thought you'd be.
I like that thought a lot. I've never quite looked at it from that lens before, but I like that a lot. It's like just to look back and see, again, how far you've come and what you're capable of. And maybe that is just the lesson in and of itself of how strong we really are.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And often, I know when things are easy, I'm not the best version of me. When after I go through Lyme, I'm pretty much the best version of me.
Yes.
So,
yes.
So,
well, this has been awesome, Mike. I really do appreciate your time and your willingness to share more about your experience and just some things that people can think about in their own way to help themselves through this. Because as your doctor had pointed you, that kind doctor, this isn't something that is black and white. And sometimes you do have to be your own best advocate, and it can be very hard and it can be tiring and it can be lonely and it can be depressing and it can be so many of the negative spectrum emotions coupled then I think with the illness itself makes the brain not function properly. And so it's really nice to hear your perspectives on that. Again, I think that will help a lot of people to have a little bit of a different worldview with regard to this sickness. So thank you for that.
Well, I enjoyed it, and hopefully somebody can take something positive. I always have everybody in the Lyme community. I am a member of the jiu-jitsu community that I'm proud of because it took me 10 years to get my black belt. But I will always say this, you will always hear me say this, that one of the most remarkable communities out there is the Lyme community, because you see people that are so sick, but they're willing to step up and help people. Even if they're in bed, they're willing to step up and help you, even if it's just to talk. And to me, it's truly touching and amazing that people can be so sick and I mean, battling really bad neurological Lyme, really bad, POTS, whatever, just living a pretty brutal life. And yet they're willing to take time out of their life, even if it's during a storm, to talk you, to give advice, or just to say, hey, I'm here for you to vent to. And when I realized that about the Lyme community, and another thing I see is I never got married and I don't have children, but I see these moms with children that are sick, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I try to project myself into them, and I'm like, man, I was doing good just to get through this with me. My hat goes off, like my heart and respect. I don't know how they do it, but that shows you the determination of moms. And I see it in the Lyme community. It's usually not the dads, it's the moms, and they make things happen. And there's a lot of stuff on the Lyme groups about moms. And even in my life, my mom is the one that made things happen. So when I see these moms in the Lyme groups, I'm amazed at their strength, not only because they're dealing with so much physically, but their kids are too, and they pull it all together. They get themselves to the doctors, their kids, and I have so much. For one thing, I'm like, man, these girls are tough. I'm amazed at their toughness, and then I'm in awe of the determination to get them better.
Yes. So. Yes. It's a fight on all levels for everybody. And it's sad that it has to be something that pushes people to that level of having to perform and to save themselves. But it is kind of a beautiful thing when you actually look at it in like a weird warped way. It's a very beautiful thing to see that fight and how hard people will fight to save themselves and the ones that they love.
Yes.
I can't imagine being a mom and having kids. Like, that's partially why I do this, is I think about kids. I've got 3 goddaughters, and I'm like, if either, I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would do, because
that was one of the most, so even when I was going in the doctors, I mean, with my head hung low, tears in my eyes, I would see children come in and I could tell they would break my heart, because, I just can't imagine being that sick as a child, like not being able to go to school, not being able to be, and I know what I went through as an adult, losing friends. And when you're a kid, you care about that more. And I'm like, man, these poor kids, like my heart, like I said, my heart goes out to them. And so I try to, I try to donate back to certain groups that help grant kids and stuff. That's an important part of my journey too, is to try to help where I can a little bit. So
that's good of you, Mike. You're a very good person. And I really do appreciate you. And I'm grateful that our paths have crossed despite it being through Lyme and tick-borne illness. I wouldn't wish it on my own worst enemy, let alone people I care about. Yes. And I see you get up every day and you just keep going. And that resilience is something that a lot of people don't have, to just keep going. And so I commend you for that. It's not easy. And I really pray for you that you're going to get better through this episode, and this too shall pass, and you will be back to, feeling good.
Yes. Yeah. That's the plan. We'll do it.
Yes. But thank you again for your time here. And again, for those still listening here, this is the Silver Lyming. It's episode here with Mike Gottesman. And again, this podcast is really brought to you to just help you to understand more about Lyme disease, some of the things that you can do to help support your body, and just to hear that it's not all bad. You can get better. And there is a big community out here that's willing to help you and support you and encourage you on your way. So you can reach out to Mike. He's on both Facebook and Instagram, correct? Or not Facebook anymore?
I'm on there, but I kind of kept it just so I can get on groups, find information, but I'm on Instagram.
Yeah. And so he's I think you're under your name now, right? Or do you have
Yeah. I think it's my name, or My Road to Remission.
Thank you. Because I think you had another name before too that I still have in my head. I kind of went, when I was really battling out, I was like, social media right now is a distraction that's kind of, I'm getting too caught up in. And so I took a little bit of a break. Okay, fair. But if you want to reach out to Mike, I'm sure that he's open to talk to you. You can always reach out to me. That's not a problem. But we are here to help to support and encourage you along your way, because we want you to know that you can get better too. And I really just wish you the best on your journey, Mike, and I will continue to be here to cheer you along your way.
Well, I appreciate it. And it's really awesome to see, watching your journey and you giving so much back. And I know, obviously your journey really impacted you because you've done a lot to educate yourself, to put yourself in a position to help others and bring in a lot of awareness. And I have a lot of respect for that and admiration. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I'll give you a big virtual hug.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to sharing this episode soon.
Okay. Sounds good. You have a good weekend.
Mike. Yeah, you too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.